Hello.
Good afternoon, all.
Afternoon.
Special guest in the house, Mr.
Scott
Cox.
Cox with us.
Looking forward to it.
Coach extraordinaire, and to fix our
Yes.
improving golf swings.
He gets to relax for a little while, and then he'll be put to work in about 40 minutes.
Working hard.
We will be working hard.
We'll be working hard.
Yeah.
We need you.
You're an autopilot. We're definitely working hard. That's
Yeah.
for sure. Hope you're all well, guys. Interesting week of golf on
Yeah, it
all
was.
tours. You had a very successful day yesterday with two of your students over in the Corn Ferry.
Yes.
Yep, it was
First
a good
and
day.
second.
First and second, that's always a good way to go.
Can't beat that.
EJ Pfister, one of my good friends in Oklahoma. He's the primary coach, but I've been consulting with Kevin Doherty and Rian Gibson that won for the last 2.5 years or so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
That is very, very cool.
Working hard.
Love it. It's great to hear.
Waste management was another Scotty Scheffler masterclass on how to golf your ball, how to get the ball in the hole in the lowest score
Number
you
of
possibly
squares.
can.
It wasn't the prettiest
Wasn't
in
pretty.
the world.
None of that was
Wasn't
pretty.
pretty,
How
no.
does he sign for seven? Seven?
That's what we
Was
were
that
talking
what it
about.
was?
6
How
or
does he
7
do that?
under. I don't know. That was my first
It
comment.
looked like he might have been 2 under.
Yeah.
Like
it
he's
really
even,
didn't
he's
look
like,
like
yeah, I did my best stuff today. What?
Yeah, it's
Like
scary.
bogey free.
I know.
I mean, it's outrageous.
He just does it in a bit of a different. You mentioned, I think correctly, his wedges and his putting are incredibly good. Because it looked like, and we posted, like Nick Taylor was hitting every fairway. He's hitting lots of greens. He was giving up a lot of distance off the tee. That was the one thing I noticed. Like Scotty and Rom were 40, 50 past him,
Apex.
and low ball off his forearm
Yeah, it was
versus them
interesting.
hitting 8-iron.
So a little bit of a sort of sidebar on that is Nick Taylor's been working with a good friend of mine, Ryan Hawley, out in
yeah.
British Columbia
Yeah,
on his
Vancouver.
ground reaction force stuff. They've worked on some power production. I still think it's obviously a work in progress, but I think they're doing a hell of a job.
That's
And
good. He does look faster.
Nick Taylor's, he's a good player. He's solid all
Yeah.
around, but he made a little bit more speed. I think he could.
I mean, he was creeping over 170. So
I mean,
if
you
he got
can
it up a
kind of
bit
see
further.
that club in transition at times gets a little quick, and in that kind of quicker transition, you can tell where the handle, without the excess speed, you can see the dynamics of the delivery is going to be a little on the low side.
Yes.
You just see the guys like Ram and Scheffler. I mean, Scheffler especially, and how high his hands get. I mean, he can put a lot of speed on it, and he can put a lot of loft on it.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like Nick has quite the same ability. I mean, Nick had to play close to his best stuff.
Yes.
He
played great.
He was
played
really,
great.
really impressive. But even
And
still,
really, I think they've done a great job on that course. I think they've made it more difficult over the last few years. Like if you notice, the scores weren't 25 under like it used to be in the desert, where
True.
guys would shoot lights out. They've toughened it up. They've tightened up some of the landing areas. Greens were pretty firm.
They
They
really
were
were.
very firm.
You saw some balls getting over the greens where it was almost impossible to get
Yeah.
up and down.
Yeah.
one of your players, Eric Barnes, who's a Corn Ferry graduate, and has been on the Corn Ferry for 8 years, and this year graduated, or last year graduated to get his card. He said to you, he said that's the biggest difference between Corn Ferry and PGA Tour is the green firmness.
100%, and there's a certain apex you need, certain spin rate you need for sure to play the PGA Tour well, especially from, let's say, that critical distance 180 to 220.
Right.
Getting that ball to land soft enough on those firm greens.
Yeah.
So we've done some things equipment-wise, which we talked about. Added a little bit of loft to the irons. Changed the bounces on the wedges slightly just to create a little bit more spin, a little bit more, a little bit higher ball flight. Eric's a bit of a masher, kind of a little bit of a flatter trajectory, a lot of speed. So this has gotten the ball flight up a little bit without only about a 2 to 3 yard carry loss, but the stopping power much better.
Okay, so he's got some more spin and height to the ball.
Absolutely.
That's great. I mean, you lose 2 to 3 yards is not significant.
Not
is
for
it?
those
When
guys.
you've
Not
got
when you're hitting
excess.
7 iron 190 yards.
Yeah,
It's
who
okay,
cares
so-
about 2 yards?
Good point.
All right, well, why don't we get into a few
Let's
questions?
dive in there, yeah.
There'll be some fitting ones initially, which is totally fine, guys.
Yeah.
But starting around now, if you want to tailor your questions towards the expertise of Mr. Cox, we don't get to see him all the time, so I would take advantage.
Absolutely.
And we will only be on for around half an hour, so it'll be a bit of a speed round. But I'm going to get to
Cool.
our friend John Jensen has opened,
Oh, John.
as he always has, bought us lunch. Thank you, John.
Always buys his lunch. What a
So
man.
John has a question that I think you can answer, just a logistical question. He's going to buy a special edition hazardous PVD from the store,
Yes.
which is a fantastic choice.
Yeah. As used by Mr. Boucher himself.
Mr. Boucher
Yeah.
and I'm
Social
gonna
media
take,
Is that
phenomenon.
the one with the little purple in it?
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
really
like rainbow
nice.
look. It's
Yeah,
really
it looks nice.
It's probably one of the nicest looking shafts. John's basically asking, he has not chosen his driver adapter. Can he put through the purchase and let the build shop team know to hang on?
Yeah, John.
Just in the notes?
Yeah, so you know how to get hold of me, John. I've actually already told our guy Stephen, who runs the online store, to expect an order from you.
Perfect.
So any order that comes in for you for that shaft, he's already looking for it when it comes in. So you can put that through. We'll hold it off to the side. When you decide what head it is, we'll put the appropriate adapter on there, and you'll be good to go, and we can talk on specs and things like that.
Love it. And he does have a follow-up, which we might as well grab now, just because it is related to shafts. So obviously he's gone to some fittings, and that Hazardous Black Gen 4 came up in his Paradigm fitting.
Yes.
Those are his two best shafts for launch speed and spin by a bunch. I only swing 91. Okay, he's basically saying Kylie White and Hazardous Black are probably usually intended for the faster swing speed, but do you ever see someone in the lower, not that 91's slow, but slower range that those shafts work quite nicely for?
Yeah, I mean, you were doing a lesson that was kind of a fitting lesson yesterday with a client of ours, John, and you know, he wouldn't maybe naturally be everyone's choice to be an X-Flex player, but X-Flex works really well for him. He's kind of in that, you know, probably starting point of what, 104, 103, 104, but he can ramp up.
He can ramp it up to 110, but certainly let's say the average is probably 104, 105, but he really likes the heavier X stuff because he's got a lot of transitional movement there in the shaft. So definitely. Just I think a little bit more stability and transition helps him a little bit. Yeah. And then, you know, we're always looking for just, you know, John wants the lowest spin humanly possible, you know,
off the driver.
I mean, I was in the BNX practice.
1300,
it was brilliant. It was
1600.
It was like an hour and a half of comedy gold. It was just like, oh, a spinny one. You're like, John, 2300. It's like, he's like, it's not like this far. Just like if it's not 1300, he's just devastated.
That's hilarious.
It was awesome. So yeah, I mean, I think that's, guys, why we always say that speed is not the only factor when it comes to choosing the flex of the shaft. You know, you've got different loads, you've got players who move the club around the plane and offend the shaft, deflect the shaft on different planes. It's not all speed related. It can be multiple different things. It can even be, I mean, John yesterday bought two drivers. So he bought a G430 and an Aerojet.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, so if you take those two heads and you've got the heavier G430, well, you're putting different stress and you're putting different impact characteristics on that shaft than you are with both heads, because one is heavier than the other. It has different dimensions. Those different dimensions force the shaft into different positions. So, you know, for someone like that, you know, going in heavier makes a ton of sense.
Makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, from Cole. Cole says, good morning. Good morning,
Good morning, Cole.
Cole plays his irons 1 degree upright. Should my wedges be 1 degree flat? That's a good question. So having trouble on partial wedge shots, get some hosslers. Let's start with that. So basically he's asking, is that an okay progression if you're one degree up in the irons, going to 1 degree flat in the wedges? It's not uncommon, is it?
Not uncommon at all. Yeah, not uncommon at all. I think, you know, when you see someone who maybe uses a little bit more of the ground for their power production and therefore gets a little bit more vertical into the swing, and then you put them into a wedge scenario where they're hitting lots of half shots and they're not at their full extent of power production, and they tend to sit the handle down a little bit more. Obviously the versatility as well of being in the bunker, maybe, you know, sitting with the handle lower a little bit, trying to retain a little bit more loft, use the heel a touch more. But you know, what do you see from your players, you know, in that standpoint?
I would say, yeah. I mean, I don't see players actually with a solid, let's say, 1 degree flat or 1 degree fitting all the way through the bag for sure. I mean, I would say a lot of players would be a smidge more upright, maybe in the long irons, just to help them square the face. You know, let's say whatever their lie angle is on the middle clubs. And then probably lob wedge would be the flattest. So sometimes I'll see a player with the gap wedge will be kind of standard to what their set is. Sand wedge might be maybe 1 degree flatter than that. 60 degrees usually 1.5, maybe even 2 flatter, depending on how much they're using that around the greens. For a tour player, for sure, especially if you've got a sharp lead edge, the last thing you want to do is feel that heel catch. So they'd rather see the toe slide a little bit, and maybe even, as you said, open it up, lower the toe even a little bit more. So if anything, you get a little bit of toe interaction, which is going to open the face, maybe allow them to hit a little bit softer, a little bit
Yeah,
higher.
that's a very good point. Yeah, I think that's a great way of maintaining dynamic loft, isn't it? Is it for people who maybe don't know how to control the face quite as well as having that deflection. As we always talk about it when Gareth's in, and how much we want the sole to kind of make contact in a shallow fashion, but we want it to kind of impact before the ball.
Right.
So yeah, that's a good point.
But we also have a choice, like which part of the sole, right?
Yeah.
So I think if we get a little bit more toward the toe, for good players, it's going to feel a little safer. Feels like you can give it a little more gas, a little bit more spin, perhaps, because you can give it a little more speed, as opposed to drop kicking it with the heel.
Gotcha. Second half of the question for Cole was basically you saying he loves the Diamond DF shaft. I guess that's out of production now. Is that an older one?
Yeah, older one.
Basically saying, does he keep searching, or is there something similar you could recommend?
I mean, PD is the shaft right now that directly replaces that Cole. So I mean, if you do love it, the PD would be the first place. Anything with a traditional whiteboard profile would be worth trying for you. So you might want to be in there trying some original Ventus Black, maybe not as much as TR. Even blue TR might be one to try on the Ventus line. Some TZ5 in the Acra line, Cole, if you have access to any Acra products, I'm a fit around about you, but looking for that softer butt section and a more stable tip.
Cool. Quick one from Kevin. Kevin says, when is the Pro Sender review coming? This week, Kevin.
This week. Filmed already today.
Yeah, already filmed.
Yeah, we just chatted about that when before we went on. There's lots of good things going on with that, isn't there? It's kind of the, seems to be, you said it well, the amalgamation of many functional training aids out there, and they've just kind of coupled it all into one.
Well, all the best training aids in the world are built by Canadians, right?
Always. Everything.
It's a Canadian special.
No, absolutely. I think there's some really good benefits to it. I think you've amalgamated a couple of nice ideas into one package. It's obviously very well marketed with Mr. Woods and Mr. Foley kind of promoting that. And I think it'll be a good hit. I think for a lot of people it'll help kind of click a few boxes for them. Some of the key fundamentals that maybe people are missing out on. But yeah, definitely. We talked a little about it in the video because we have spoken a lot about some of the shallowing and sort of transition stuff that we've been working on, and kind of that feeling of being an extension of the trail wrist and kind of having the ability to pivot a little bit harder on it is something that you and I are talking about and have worked on quite a bit. So it definitely taps into a few key fundamentals for sure. When's that one coming out this week?
For sure. Which day?
Yeah, I think
it
we had
will probably
it
be Wednesday.
I
think I had it Wednesday.
Okay. Good.
We have some fitting related content for Mr. Ian Fraser that will come up first. Then you will see a Pro Sender review on Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday you will see our lessons that we're going to film with Scott in the next couple hours.
Yep.
That's this week's
Scott
schedule.
Perfect.
What do you got there?
Our good man Spud the Fud is asking, what drills would you suggest for more consistent ball striking? So a pretty kind of broad question, but what do you think in terms of a couple that are going to really help people strike it?
Well, old one, but a very simple one. Jack Nicklaus used to do this one. The stack and tilt guys, Andy Plummer and those guys really preach is just put a line on the ground, put your club on that line, and practice hitting the ground just in front of the line. Right. And very simple drill, but by far in 29 years of teaching, what we call low point control is the secret to being a repeatable player. Yeah. The best in the world control that low point plus or minus a half an inch. Yeah. So when you start talking about that low point control, that's really the timing of the club face. So if you're looking for consistency, you've got to control the low point. Right. And that's why the average golfer's low point is actually plus or minus 3 inches. So across a 6-inch interval, there's a lot that can happen on the face. So the average golfer can make the same swing and get 3 very, very different golf shots. Yeah. Your tour player is within a half an inch or the width of your pinky finger. Yeah. Is going to see an incredibly, much tighter tolerance, much more similarity shot to shot. Right. So for sure, that's an easy drill, simple drill, a rope on the ground, or just a chalk line on the ground. Put your club on that. Rehearse that as many times as you can. When you get good at it, put a ball out in front of that line and go to town. Could you get them going into a fairway bunker if they have that in their practice area where they can draw the line in the sand? And, that's what I used to do when I was teaching all the time, but still playing. was I would take all my balls into the fairway bunker and hit all of them out of the fairway bunker, because if I could strike it solidly out of the fairway bunker, certainly the grass was going to be no problem.
That's a good idea.
Kind of tightens up that low point really quick.
Love it.
Love it.
Okay, got one here. Okay, from OG Shoe. I play Callaway X13s. Those are retro, no?
There was never an X13.
Okay, so you do not play X13s.
There was an X12 and there was an X14 and a 16 and an 18.
You played X14s, okay?
Yeah.
And I think they are too heavy, okay? On vacation, played Wilson C300s. Good iron. Felt better and had better flights. Should I get some Wilson C300s, Wilson D7s, new tech help? I mean, Callaway X14s are how old? Like 15 years?
Ooh, at least.
More?
Yeah, more.
I'd say 20.
Yeah,
You are due for an upgrade.
easy 20,
Okay.
20 years old. Yeah, I think I was slightly more actually. I was an assistant pro. The first set of clubs I got when I first turned pro were X14 Pro Series.
Right.
And that would have been, I would have been aged, 18, 19, so that was 20 years ago.
So the answer is yes. And if you like the Wilsons, get the Wilsons. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you were due for an upgrade, something fierce.
Due for an upgrade, but even just go get fit.
I mean, go get fit, obviously,
Yeah, I mean,
if you
just
can.
go get fit, and I think when people narrow it down, and sometimes even to Cole's question on, okay, I love the DF shaft, even our answer to John Jensen's question of, well, if I'm, what shaft should I use if I'm trying this head versus that head? Cole might be trying that shaft in a Titleist head that performs so differently in a ping head. That just the way you're making that shaft react and perform is so different. So never think that just by taking one set of factors you can input it into another golf club and it's going to work exactly the same way. So I think ultimately, even if you're thinking some Wilson irons, find a dealer that has those Wilson irons, but be open-minded enough when you go there to try other things and go, okay, I know this from a baseline is a really good option for me, but be open to the fact there's something that could be better for you.
Yeah, totally. I think this will be a fairly easy one for you, but can you recommend a ball for a slow swing speed, 90 miles an hour in driver, and very low spin player? Sounds like a Pro V1X to me.
Well, Pro V1X, Chrome Soft X. I saw in the comments our great pal Mick Crowley, who was in from Ireland last week to see us. Always great to see Mick. So yeah, he's quicker than that, but Mick used to play an AVX, and is someone who in Ireland kind of wants to fly through the wind, etc. So he's always looking for the right balance, and so he used Balnamic to get the right recommendation when he was in for our fit with us. So he went from AVX into, I think it was Bridgestone Turbo XS or Chrome Soft X.
Okay.
So the other end of the scale, basically.
Yeah, a completely different
from
ball.
an AVX. So totally different.
Yeah.
So yeah, just think go find something, and whether it's Balnamic or a fitting store that can give you 3 or 4 balls to try and
get some numbers.
Get some numbers. Yeah. Go and feel. What do you like to feel as well?
But definitely probably be going with a firmer ball than you have now, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan Thompson has a quick iron question here. He's got the P770s, the original ones. He's basically saying he's looking at the new ZX7 Mark IIs.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the differences? P770s are hollow, obviously. ZX7s are not. But I would think distance-wise, they wouldn't be that far apart, would they?
The 770s are 1 degree weaker.
Oh, they're weaker.
Yeah,
so you
1
might
degree,
actually hit ZX7
weaker.
further.
Yeah. And those ZX7, if you look at the design, if you flip it around and look at the back of it, it has a lot of perimeter weighting and a lot specifically at the bottom. So they do tend to launch pretty nicely. It's one of the reasons they can get away with having the loft down a little bit, is the fact they pull the CG that low, they launch in a nice window, but they don't spin an awful lot.
True. They are a lower spin iron for sure.
They are definitely on the lower end. So I don't think you'd be giving up anything.
No.
Even to be honest, from an MOI perspective, Dan, you'd actually find that the ZX7 would be higher MOI than a 770 as well. Actually, a P7MC is higher MOI than a P770.
Is that right?
Yeah, because P770 is not perimeter weighted.
Yeah, at all.
At all. So, when you take the properties of that head and the design, sure, the hollow body gives you ability to make the frame fast with enough forgiveness, but actually even an iron like a P7MC is more forgiving because it has the weight around the outside.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Guys, I typed it into the thing a couple times, but if you haven't asked a question, make sure you don't put one in now because we will not get
There's
to
probably
it.
a ton.
There's a million waiting, so we want to make sure we get everybody. So hang on until next week. All right. That's a good question here that maybe you both can chime in on. How do you use low point numbers during an iron fit? So we talked about low point just a bit now in a drill, but yeah, how would that come into play with an iron
We
fit?
chat a lot about that, don't we? About sole design and does it have some pre-wear on it and things like that. So if somebody has an inability to control low point, you need to build some forgiveness in there, and that's where that forgiveness term is kind of banded around a little bit, and people think about it. Well, it's toe and heel strikes. Well, it's not just that. Forgiveness is the ability to protect performance against whatever it is that might detract from performance. So, if that is for you getting the leading edge stuck in the ground, a pre-wear or a thinner sole, or some kind of sole like that is going to be more forgiving. So I think that's a big part of it in a fitting environment, how we would help.
Yeah, I think there's some sweet spot numbers there. Like if you're reasonable speed with the low point value, for example, on TrackMan, we see tour average on a 7 iron is about 4.5 inches out in front on low point. If it gets under about 2 inches out in front, it's going to feel a little bit flippy, a little scoopy. The contact is going to be a little bit questionable. So I think in terms of counterbalance irons versus let's say tip weighted shafts versus more lead deflection or less lead deflection, all these things are going to factor into exactly where that low point value is. We see some of the stronger fade players like Brooks Koepka and Justin Thomas, their low point is 7 iron 7.5 inches or so out in front.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the fade players have low points that are miles out in front.
Okay.
And probably one of my beefs with the equipment industry is if we get so much mass back in the head of the iron, we're causing generally more lead deflection, but it's also moving the low point backward toward the golf ball.
Right. Yeah.
So for some players, that might help them hit the ball higher, but they're also losing low point, so that sometimes their contact may not be fantastic.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right? They start getting low face contacts all the time.
Yeah. And that's where at times an iron that you maybe wouldn't think that would be as long or as consistent based on its design can be much more. I mean, somebody who has low point closer to the golf ball might find that they actually do really nicely with a set of kind of thinner sole blade irons. I've seen that in the past, whereas if you get a big wide sole out there and they get low point, bottom out just at or before the ball, that kind of bounce of the sole, it just gives them no ability to manage that. I mean, the wider sole really is born from players who are trying to kind of refrain from just swiping across it as much and trying to kind of get that club to bottom and shallow out as much, as well as pulling the CG back. But if you get a good player, thinner soles generally work a little bit more efficiently than something that's really thick.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that. And I think too, just like you were saying, the pre-worn edge, I think, or whether there's a little bit of a bevel on that lead edge or not. Yeah. For some players, that's going to be great. I know Tiger, kind of knocks off the lead edge on his wedges quite a bit. And there's a very distinct 45-degree angle on that lead edge to sort of stop that lead edge from digging. But there are players, like I know for sure, I mean, the sharper the lead edge, generally the better my iron play is. Because I tend to maybe get my low point perhaps a little too shallow. This helps me get a little bit higher vertical strike point on the face.
Which is big.
I get it.
Yeah, and those are some, we're talking there, just what Scott was saying about like how you manipulate low points, some of the little nuances. I mean, that's some really advanced fitting stuff. When you can understand how you can, buy yourself a window of space forward or back when it comes to the components that you're giving someone, I mean, that's really when you start understanding things at a much higher level.
Yeah. I think that's not on a lot of people's radar.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, from Zachary. Zachary said he was fit into the BGT Brava, the shaft that we know. He says that he worries that long-term timing will be difficult. Do you find that someone who swings, in the 110 range that's been fit into that, do they stick with it? Do they end up going back to something stiffer? And also, P.S. Scott is a 10 out of 10 coach. We agree.
We agree.
Yeah, what do you think about that? It hasn't been that long with, I know it's Autoflex you've seen enough to say that Autoflex has staying power.
Yep, it does.
You don't see people going, in large numbers going, that was fun, but forget it.
At that 110 range, though, I think we're talking 110, and if that little
Maybe
arrow there
more?
is and up,
Yeah.
I do think it tends to be more of a fad that people are curious about and try, and tend to then default back to
Something
what
traditional.
works. I'll never forget when Al de la Rogue first came out, and there was some materials in the Al de la Rogue that allowed them to make it exceptionally strong but light. And there was all this talk at that time about, potentially we can make 30-gram shafts that are as stiff as our current 70-gram X-Flex shafts. And they were trying them out with Lee Westwood, and there was a bunch of other players at the time, and players just went, we don't like that.
Interesting.
There's different things go on. When you make a shaft light, you ultimately make the walls very, very thin. That changes the entire feel of that shaft for that player. So, it's one thing to have a very thin layering, and back to the Aldel NV, the whole design philosophy was around micro laminate shaft layering.
Yeah.
So very, very thin. But again, it just, players, how brittle that shaft tends to feel, because you've got very, very strong graphite, but very little of it.
Right.
It doesn't really translate into a feel that people like. So generally, you have to end up going a bit softer, a la Autoflex, etc., etc.
Would it feel more harsh?
Much more harsh.
Okay.
Much more.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so Zachary, you might need a backup shaft at some point. Here's one related to our lesson work. So Matthew says, after Scott's first lesson with Ian, I tried out the, I'm assuming he means the adduction. At first, amazing results. I played yesterday and started to struggle with push shots. Felt like I couldn't turn through. What would you give Matthew as a little pointer to get him, back on track? Obviously, it sounds like he's dabbling in this. Maybe he hasn't done it for too long, but
I would say this, probably if we're struggling with those punch shots a little bit, what's happening is that one of the ways that you're creating that punch shot is to sort of release those arms quite a bit downward into the shot to try and kind of, let's say, hit a stinger. So your shoulder line is going to be quite level. Your arms are traveling quite downward. So you're releasing that lead arm adduction. So what needs to happen a little bit probably is two things. We probably need to open the stance slightly, move the ball back slightly in the stance, keep that lead arm adduction by moving slightly closer. So anytime you're hitting a knockdown, you should be about 1 inch closer to the ball than sort of your regular setup. So that combination allows you to get down to the ball and hit that knockdown shot without, without sort of losing all of the lead arm adduction.
Yeah, and if you're hitting that punch shot and you're driving the angle attack down a little bit, that's where the open stance comes from, so we don't push swing direction too far right.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, I see.
We don't end up with a straight hook that starts on line and then hooks because we've got, we've gone from 6 down to 10 down or something.
Okay. Equipment question here from Jack. Jack says he has AMT S300 in his Rogue Pro irons. He's got Tensi Blue stiff in woods, and he uses a Chrome Soft ball. He wants to launch the woods higher. Ball chains or shaft change. Chrome Soft is going to launch and spin high enough, I would think.
It will launch on the lower side, just because it is a soft compression golf ball, so it's not the firmer X. So typically we'll get the launch in that kind of mid window with kind of high spin, and when you add high spin, you add high friction, you're actually pulling the flight ever so slightly down. So we would probably like to see you launch the maybe even try something like Chrome Soft XLS. I'd love to see you try that, Jack, because something that we found with that is with wedges, it really retained a lot of wedge spin.
It did, yeah.
While launching in maybe a degree and a half higher window. So I think you could kind of keep a lot of constants within your setup there, go to the LS golf ball and see that slightly higher window that you would like.
Makes sense. This is for Scott from Fritz.
Fritz.
Please comment on benefits of
deWiz.
deWiz? What is that?
Yeah, deWiz is a little watch made by a Swedish company. Henrik Stenson involved. Actually, Bryson DeChambeau is involved a little bit as well. Basically, it's a timing device more than anything else. So the watch kind of gives us some interesting metrics on hand speed, as well as where it happens in the swing and sort of the timing of the hand speed. So just I always get excited when people look at golf swings differently, right, than maybe we traditionally do. So they're looking at this very differently, saying there's basically two elements to your swing. You've got this, let's say, initial pulling down with the body and the rotation, all these other things. Then we've also got this angular release of the wrist. And so it's giving you sort of a breakdown on how fast that's going, and then also how that releases to the golf ball. So basically the release point average on a wedge shot, for example, is 42 centimeters before impact. The release point on 7 irons is about 47 centimeters before impact. Release point on the driver is about 52 centimeters before impact. And that makes sense. There's slightly different release points because we're lining up different amounts of shaft lean, right? So the wedge shot, we're going to have the most amount of shaft lean. We're going to have the release point a little bit later in the swing. Okay. And then the driver, we're trying to line it up a little bit more vertically. So we're going to make that release point a little bit earlier. Now, there is a correlation between the hand speed value and your club head speed. So that's where I've used it quite extensively from a club head speed production standpoint, just to help players understand how to go faster, right? So if we get that hand speed, basically tour average hand speed somewhere around 19 to 21 miles an hour on the hand speed value, that's going to equate to somewhere around 115 miles an hour roughly on the driver. Your super long guys, your Cameron Champ, they're getting hand speeds that are over 23, 24 miles an hour. So very, very fast. That Wilco Nienaber, the South African giant, is built like a daddy long leg. I believe they've clocked his hand speed somewhere around 27 or 28 miles an hour. Wow. So just monstrous hand speed. And kind of give some value to, let's say, arc size, right? And understanding how that kind of works. Now, we don't need to be 6'9" to create that hand speed necessarily, but you've obviously got to be very, very strong to create that much acceleration in the first half of your downswing. So, anyways, very cool little product, very easy. Strap it on, throw it in your bag. You go to my Instagram there. I think there's a link tree there. You get a little discount, I think, if you go to my link tree on Scott Koch Certified on Instagram. There's my plug of the day.
Nice. Why not?
But anyways, take a look at that. The deWiz guys are great, very open to questions, and definitely a product I use with some of my players for speed production.
Yep, you and I have used it. We've done a little bit of dabbling with it last year. Yeah, there's some really cool, interesting correlations with it from a timing perspective. In the equipment world as well, some correlations is, how do you control, manage your timing and tempo with heavier clubs versus lighter clubs? Can you find yourself in a nice kind of pattern where you can kind of be much more consistent with a specific weight or length or whatever. So
that is interesting.
It is very, very cool.
I think Jack just followed up a little bit, but I think Ian grabbed part of your question. So ChromeSoft X or ChromeSoft X LS, Jack, was what Ian recommended for you.
Yeah.
Cheaper brands, I think that Snell MTB-X would probably be a good one.
Would be a really good one as well.
That's the only one I can think of.
Yeah, you're right. That was a really good ball.
Firm ball, but spun, right?
High spin. Yeah.
That would be our lower cost alternative.
We've not talked a lot about that one in a while, have we? Snell, they've not. I thought
they've kind of gone a little quiet.
Their line, but
I agree.
MTB
No new
X
releases.
and MTB Black have been all they've offered for a long time.
I haven't seen many marketing from them either, so I don't know. Maybe they're cooking something up. I'm just gonna keep going down the list. Is that cool?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. I did ask guys if you don't mind to hang on to your questions for next week. I know I've spammed the comment section, but I just don't want to miss all your questions because it's a waste. From JS Golfer, do you ever have fittings where anything that should theoretically work just doesn't work for a player, and things that don't make sense somehow work? Yeah. So basically, he's basically saying, do you ever just kind of have to experiment with a player? And yeah. I mean, totally.
The reason we have an hour with our clients for a driver fit and not 5 minutes is because we're wrong until we're right.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of some trial and errors. Get to know our players, get to know what we think in theory is going to work, have a chance to test it out in practice, and then we're narrowing it down in the last 20 shots. So we spend 30 shots in a driver fit, getting to know your driver, and then we fit spend the last 20 shots dialing it in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. From Shivers Basketball. Is thinking of picking up G430 irons. Very nice.
Love them.
Interestingly, though, he's a plus 1.3 handicap. Would bending the irons 1 to 2 degrees flat reduce the offset? No. Bending them weak would reduce the offset.
Yes.
So they have a fair amount of offset on them. I think if you're a plus 1.3 handicap, you probably know how to deliver some shaft lean. So yeah, maybe weak would be the better way to go than flat.
Maybe I230s might be the better way to go. I mean, we chatted about
agreed.
it earlier in a video, and I'm not going to
Spoil it.
because it's going to be a pretty cool video when it comes out. But there's something about that I230 that is very unique. And if you tend to miss left as a right-handed golfer, you're probably going to want to get into that one before you try G430, especially.
You have to Frankenstein that G430. Wouldn't you just bend it all over the place?
Yeah. CG's back. It doesn't quite have the same. Actually, it doesn't have as much protection against the left miss as an I230 would have.
Which is crazy.
We'll leave it at that.
Leave it at that.
Well, without
Yeah,
spoiling.
good question. But yeah, I agree with Ian. The I230 would be great. Is the new PXG ball in the house for testing? Not yet, but we will be testing it soon.
Yeah, well, we're actually going to be in Scottsdale in 2 weeks. Today?
It's
2 weeks today?
It's a weekend.
A week today.
It's in 8 days. So yeah, we'll be at PXG in 8
So
days.
we will, yeah.
You sure you got the right flights?
I think,
Ian's going in 2 weeks. I'm going in a
is it
week.
not Valentine's Day in 2 weeks' time?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we will definitely test the ball. Yeah, we'll be down there, as we said, almost this time next week. So we won't be the first to review it. I've seen a few reviews come out already, but we will review it 100%. Okay, question from Jamie, which I would love an answer to. I've always wondered the same thing. Scott, what is the hell drill and what is it for?
Well, it's just named the hell drill because it's very difficult. But basically, normal lead hand grip, trail hand is open on the back of the shaft. Okay. And some of my players can hit full shots like this. It's very difficult, as I said, hence the name. But basically, because I can't grab it, so this is great for players that like to be very trail hand dominant. They try and dominate the swing with that trail hand. So this shuts this off. It forces the player to actually use both the left side and right side of their body quite equally to be able to keep the hand on the club. So if you're a big staller and dumper of the club, it's a great drill just to put down in the back of the shaft, hit some shots like this. You'll continue to feel your pivot move through the strike. And as a result, if your pivot keeps moving, we see basically a reduction in the amount of hand action. So for those players that get very handsy, very dumpy at impact where they stall out their pivot, it's a great drill just to open that up. Nice. Definitely if you're an overdrawer of the ball, somebody that blocks and hooks it a ton, definitely a drill that you want to do lots of.
Sweet. I like it. Next is
Lewis.
Lewis is addressing this to Scott. He says, I'm down 30 yards on 7-iron distance. He's only getting 165 carry from 98 clubhead speed. Yeah, you're down. Advice on better compression. Launch is too high, ball speed's down, but strike is fine. So he's obviously adding a lot of loft.
Ton of loft, right. So generally, I would look at, number one correlator to somebody that's going to dump it under is basically grip. Okay, and club face. So generally that face is quite open, and you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So you're using that open face and you're lining up the shaft very vertically there at impact to try and square it up. So the average D loft on a 7-iron is somewhere around 10 degrees, 12 degrees of dynamic loft reduction from setup to impact. So we're probably hitting the golf ball with the static loft of 34 degrees instead of, let's say, 24 degrees. And as a result, we're going to lose a ton of ball speed, ton of compression. At 98 miles an hour, you should be well over 130 ball speed, which is going to go somewhere around that, kind of 185 to 192 kind of window.
Gotcha.
Love it.
If anyone's asked, a few people have asked, Scott's Instagram is Scott Caux Certified, if you're looking.
Perfect. Every time I come on the channel
few
here, I pick up
followers.
About 300 followers. It's great.
Yeah, so let's get him 500 new
There we go.
followers.
Absolutely. We got to catch up with Mr. Boucher.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
good
we
luck
could
with
add
that.
the three of us together and still be in
be there.
the wrong end of that.
What do you got there?
Daniel?
Yep.
So Daniel struggled with early extension throughout having lessons on this. Any tips? Struggle with launch. heel strike drivers, ideas for head and shaft combos. Well, I think let's address the early extension before we get into the heads and shaft combos, because if we can get you out of doing that, we might find that you wouldn't need the same head and shaft as if we recommend right now. So what do you early extension's a big one, isn't it? A lot of people are suffer from
Yeah, I mean, basically, I mean, early extension has a number of different causes, but basically, in most players, it's going to happen because of the way the hips function at the top of the backswing.
Right.
So a lot of players, to be able to make a full turn, will stand up in their pelvis to try and increase their rotation.
Yeah, right.
Okay, but as they turn back, they don't actually go back into, let's say, forward flexion or sort of a front bend.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like they've stood up, but in reality, all they've done is stood up at the top of their swing and then turned back to the golf ball, and now they're early extended. So often it's a joint function in the hips because of lack of mobility. So sometimes if we can gain some mobility in the pelvis, where we can still stay down, if you will, as we rotate, then when we rotate back, we're able to sort of get back into our original posture or some better sort of squatty look halfway down. And then I'm sure on the equipment side, maybe over length club might be one reason why players might stand up. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely trying to find.
So go shorter would help.
Find some room. Yeah, if you can give someone, we talked about earlier on, incentivize someone to do the correct thing.
Right.
If you can give them an incentive to stay down and in the shot versus trying to create space for themselves.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, golf clubs have got longer
They
as
have.
the game has gotten about distance, and manufacturers have offered you more distances. We now have golf clubs that are half an inch longer than they were 10 years ago across woods and irons. So
Which is not helping a lot of people, is it?
no.
Okay. Another one for Scott. Scott, can you describe the
Neg beta
Neg
form
beta
change.
negative
Oh,
beta
boy.
form
All right.
pattern? Can you describe it?
Now
in
we're-
10 words or less?
Yeah, exactly. I said we'll keep this real short. Basically, I teach 13 different swing patterns. Some of them are what we call planar patterns, where think Adam Scott going up and down the same lines. And some of them are what we call non-planar patterns, which is going to kind of stand the shaft up and kind of shallow it out. So negative beta was a term coined by Dr. Stephen Nesbitt back in 2004 in a paper, and he called what we call beta, or off-plane movement of the club. He called that negative beta. So that's the technically, sort of the first reference we had to, let's say, shallowing, right? Everyone's talking about shallowing these days.
Yes.
But in reality, it's sort of this negative beta idea that Dr. Nesbitt coined up, literally almost 20 years ago. So this negative beta form tracer is basically we're standing the shaft up like an umbrella a little bit in the backswing. The transitional sequence is causing the shaft to pitch downward. And then when it comes down, it's going to trace the form down the right form or the trail form into the golf ball. Okay. So that's kind of the pattern. There's a lot of specifics with it, certainly beyond the scope of 10 words or less.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think you did a good summary.
Well done. Yeah,
Well
that
done.
was not easy for sure to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Got that one
Yeah,
there?
JH. Hey guys, love the channel. Struggling with rolling right hand through impact. My coach has me working on any tips to help sort of too much right hand rotation.
I mean, generally what you see, I always like to say, what you see in your swing, especially post-impact, is created at least two positions before that.
Right.
So generally that's happening because of the way you're bringing that down. So if you look at what's happening maybe around waist height in the downswing, generally the face is open and the club head's probably too far behind the hands at that point. Okay. From that position, the only thing you can do is you're sort of pot committed. You've got to add some what we call axial rotation of the shaft or supination in the form to be able to square the face up. Otherwise, we're just going to block it well right. So usually you're looking at trying to line that up a little bit earlier in the swing. Then you'll see a reduction generally at impact.
Love it.
I like it.
Love it. Composure Chase. I was fitted into a Tennessee White 1K60 TX. Love the feel of the shaft, but want something with lower spin numbers, currently over 3,000. But with the same feel, any suggestions? I've used different golf balls. Really, the club head is the one that's going to really produce. If you love the feel and you time the 1K well, you just got to find the right club head. I think you'll probably find it's far easier for you to match up the launch and spin windows with the right head for you than the right shaft.
Yeah. Especially if he's hitting it well, like you said.
Yeah,
Right?
totally. So yeah, go with the club head choice.
That is good advice. There's someone just quickly asking about the Calgary shop. I just wanted to grab it because it seemed. Where is it? For God's sake. Sorry, I can't find it, but someone asked if the same head and shaft options are available in Calgary as they would see in Toronto.
Basically, we have a matched master matrix that we have at all of our stores. So Calgary has the same as Mississauga, has the same as the Pulpit in the summertime, has the same as Toronto. So
Perfect.
all the same.
Good. Thought we'd clear that up. Okay, we are trying to wrap up, guys. So I'm gonna grab the last few because we've got some lessons to do.
We got to fix your
There's
swing.
some work to do here.
I know that mine can't be done in 20 minutes. Scott's got work to do. Brendan is saying, okay, so Brendan is in Nova Scotia. Mm-hmm. Do you have any suggestions? Do you know anybody out in Nova Scotia for fitting?
In Nova Scotia,
I don't know if anyone does fitting out there.
You
have to go green grass somewhere.
Yeah, demo program, club pros. Yeah, I don't know of anyone who's kind of out in Atlantic Canada just yet.
Sorry, Brendan.
No.
One of my guys, Josh Landine's at Ashburn.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Does he do some fitting?
Yeah, he does
Oh,
some
good.
fitting.
Oh,
and
fantastic.
Perfect.
Good coach. So
Josh.
maybe do that. Josh Landine.
Landine.
And he's where?
At Ashburn.
Ashburn in Nova Scotia.
There
Okay.
you go.
Brendan,
Brendan, out and see Josh.
Good thing Scott was here because otherwise we had a zero for you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Jack's just following up about the golf ball.
Yeah.
Jack, you really don't have to send these super chats,
Yeah,
but thank
no,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, Pro V1X would be in a similar vein of what you're. If you want to try Titleist, then Pro V1X would be the one to try. Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, Travis is borderline on the X-Flex category. I'm now
Travis?
35 and speed is starting to slow down.
Oh boy.
Not there yet, Travis.
No.
Get
Age
back
is
on
not the reason.
No.
You're too young.
Would stiff and stepping the shaft be better than going to X-Flex? Yeah, I mean, I'd take some advice on what the reason is. If you're slowing down, if you wear X now or not, or if you were put into an X for reasons other than just your swing speed. If somebody at some point said, you needed to be an X because of this reason, I'd go and get some advice on that. For someone who can actually watch it some shots. Before making a choice to go back into stiff. The other part is as well, there are some stiff shafts out there that are stiffer than extra stiff shafts. So it just depends on the profile of the shaft as well. So yeah, don't base it just on your speed. And at 35, you're definitely not over the hill.
No.
You better not be
Dude, you're scaring me.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn 34 this year.
I'm 49. I'm trying to get faster.
Yes,
there you go. Ronnie's 68. He's trying to get faster.
Ronnie boy is getting. 92
He is
is the
faster.
fastest we've ever seen him. So
Nice.
yeah,
Mr. Farmer?
No, Ronnie Pikowski.
Pikowski,
Who's our
Pikowski.
mid-handicap contributor on the
Nice.
channel.
92. Good job.
90. He
Well
came in
done.
and he was saying that he's like, oh guys, I'm at 68 years old. I'm a bit slower this year.
Yeah.
I think time's catching up with me. He's like, I'm at 85 miles an hour club head speed, and within half an hour he was at 92.
Wow.
The first one he hit was like 88.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
Ronnie, I
It's
think
like,
you're going to be
you're
okay
okay.
today. Yeah,
Yeah,
you'll be
yeah.
fine. Yeah.
He tends to get a little technical, and I think his technical
Kinda slows him
down.
Yeah.
Just being
Just
very
fair.
thoughtful about his movements and stuff.
just fair.
Totally.
Okay, sweet. Good live, guys. Sorry we need to be a bit abbreviated because we have a couple hours of filming and we have a window to do so. So we are going to leave you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the questions. Are we here live next Monday? I believe so. We'll do a quick live next Monday.
When do we fly next week? Is it?
Well, it's Tuesday, so it's going to be an interesting
all right.
day.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll be here Monday then. Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you wanted to film Sunday, though.
Sure.
Because
we
otherwise
can.
I don't know when I'm going to edit videos.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
You may see us on Sunday. We'll give you
no,
we'll
that's
give you
a good
notice. We'll give you notice. But we'll be live either Sunday or Monday next week. We are traveling a bit, so as we mentioned, Pro Sender, the new training aid from David Woods and Sean Foley. You'll see a review of that Wednesday. You will see a video about Ian choosing a set of irons tomorrow. You will see 2 lessons, one for each of us with Scott towards the end of the week, and that is this week's scoop. And then into next week, I actually don't know. It's a mystery. You'll have to wait and see.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Guys,
Scott, thanks for
appreciate it,
being with
Daniel.
us.
Thanks for coming
That was
on.
fun. That was great.
Nice to mix up a little bit.
It was fun to do
and,
some,
talk a little bit more about
swing
some of
stuff.
it. And hopefully, guys, you found that valuable. Whether we got to your question or not, I'm sure a lot of you, heard some similar stories
Resonated with
amongst
it.
that. So that was really, really cool.
Okay.
Really cool.
Perfect.
We will see you guys later. Thanks for watching.
Cheers, guys.